Welcome to our The Voice of the Agent conversation about people and salary. So, I'm going to ask Danny first women make up roughly 70% of junior roles, but a significant minority of senior leadership positions. The industry talks endlessly about recruitment. Should we not be talking about gender instead?
Well, on behalf of my people, and Claire, feel free to jump in. I don't necessarily. I think we should be talking about retention, irrespective of gender. I think, Claire, please do jump in. From my point of view, as me, and this is my opinion, what I find very tricky about any conversations to do with women and work, especially, I think, and what we're talking about here is if you have a baby, because that tends to be what causes a career break, is how much your motivation changes, and you can't. That's esoteric. You can't legislate for that because, I've had friends that were absolutely adamant they were going to go back to work after having a baby, then really enjoyed being a mum and stayed at home, and equally the other way around. But a lot of people I know have gone back to work part-time and then full-time once the children were older. And what that means is there is naturally a career break. From my experience, you lose your confidence a little bit because you've got to go back. You're juggling different things. You're going back to work with an entirely new set of circumstances, and I think that is part of the reason it is harder to retain women, and it is just that shift in mindset that you can't legislate for. I think what is really important to realise is, why try and understand why people leave. It's often not to do with money, and if you think about recruiting, there are the tangible costs and there are the intangible costs. So the tangible costs are things like your recruitment fees, advertising the job. Your intangible costs are lost productivity, the disruption to the team, especially if they're a well-liked and key member of staff, drag in terms of productivity, so you get a new person on board. So actually to replace someone can cost 50 to 200%, I think the figure is, of that person who has gone. With women, I think a lot of the changes are going to help women come back to work. You've got the self-employed model, you've got working from home. I think employers are recognising that need for flexibility. So I'm not going to take a lunch break. I'm going to go and pick my kids up, but I will be on email at 9 o'clock at night. I think everything is a lot more fluid than it used to be, and that definitely helps.
Brilliant. I mean, all the data tells us that the more diverse your team from everything, age, gender, sexuality, colour, ethnicity, whatever, the better decisions are. But I think I haven't answered this, but I'll ask you, Claire, does our industry have a problem with women?
Well, it has done. And I think I've experienced that for quite a lot of my career. That's not to say that we do have to embrace the differences as well. And I think sometimes we get too caught up with demanding absolute equality when we're not equal. We're very different. We're different people. So I'm going to be fairly controversial, and it's probably not what people are going to expect me to say. But the most successful years of my career have been post 38. So I came back into it having got my kids to a situation where the childcare wasn't a nightmare and overly expensive. And I've been able to take opportunities, and predominantly in the supplier world, because business development allows you to work from home and to do exciting stuff. Estate agency does employ a lot of people who do want a job that they'll have until maybe they start a family, and not everybody wants a career. And I think sometimes there's a confusion about why people are even at work and whether they actually like doing just what they do. But weirdly enough, women get put into sales progression slots. Property managers, they're put into places where they think women want to go rather than take them through a career path. And what's changing is lots of young women aren't rushing to get married, they're not rushing to start families, and they do want to know what the career path is. And agencies well behind on that. There doesn't seem to be a career path for men or for women or for any gender that you happen to choose. So I don't think it's a sexist thing. I think it's historical, but it is in banking, it is in law. Now in law, there are more and more women in leadership positions. They've turned that corner very well. But actually that's because more and more women work their way up to senior and partner from being a secretary. We haven't made it quite as easy for women in the estate agency to do it, but lettings and property management since the property crash in 2008 has become more and more important. and we're starting to see some really extraordinary career paths. So I think if you're going to look at our path from 18 to 35, it's a bit messy, but some of that's our choice. But look at the women from 35 to my age at 65 and see what they do with their lives then, because I think that's where the true success lies, if they want it.
I completely agree, and I think it's that key piece, isn't it? Are women not in senior leadership positions because it is denied to us or it's difficult, or is it that actually some of us don't want to do it? And I think the answer is as broad as there are 3.5 billion of us, you know. But the other thing is, over the years, the career path has changed. So again, years ago, it was traditionally like it was a ladder. You know, you went from A to B to C and you got further and further up the ladder. Then it moved to kind of a more lattice structure. And I think that's been really useful for women because you just pick up skills along the way, and there's a shift away from thinking that the hierarchical ladder isn't a good thing, and where the young people, men and women, are coming through now, it's a lot more hybrid. You know, a lot of them have side hustles, and what they are picking up is, you know, the skills that we have denied to them through taking away the Saturday jobs. They're showing this go-getting attitude because they've got a job, they're going out, they're getting side hustles, and they're bringing all of that to the table as well. So they will progress, and they want to progress. All the evidence is, and the research shows that they want to progress, but they just don't necessarily want to be in one job or one industry or one company doing better and getting promoted and working their way up that way.
There's one other thing I want to add. I'm so sorry to butt in,
No,
because
please.
I appreciate you guys haven't spoken. During my career progression, and I know Chris is certainly, and to an element of yours, Danny, we actually had the influx of banking. So we had the Halifax, the Abbey National, as was now Santander. These big corporates came into our world and created big networks. They acquired lots and lots of businesses, and then there was branch manager, and if you didn't have a branch manager, the corporate model grew from an independent base, and that hasn't been replicated since. So it's either self-employed, or it's a small independent, or it's a giant corporate. So the career path is not clear in our business anymore, and actually everybody that I worked with at the Chancellors Group pretty much went on to set up a business on their own and become their own brand, which I think shows why that office was so successful. Yeah. But at the same time, they encouraged everybody to think commercially, and we learnt some great skills. I don't see that being there anymore. So I think there's some stuff we need to do to change what the career looks like for the next generation. Otherwise, they won't want to do it.
We did some research in 2024 about mental health and discrimination, and I'll let Chris and Christopher answer this one. Is when we did the research, over 80% of women had experienced discrimination from colleagues, and let's accept it's mainly from men, and it was even worse from clients. Men, far less discrimination, more like in the 30s, 20s and 30s. Now, representing the men on the panel, now, on the basis that 85% of women or so have experienced discrimination, seeing our fellow men around us, do we see that we have a problem in this industry?
I'm going to answer that in a slightly different way, because I've been very privileged of interviewing an awful lot of women on the sofa, and a big issue that everyone tells me off camera is other women being bitches to them.
Would you like to comment on that?
Holding people back, being nasty.
Okay, there is a handful of men. I'm trying to think of my grammar here. There's a handful of men that are still living in the dark ages. Yes. And get over familiar and make inappropriate comments. They're not the majority anymore, fortunately. It was a historical problem, I would say, again, as I've mentioned previously, with things like banks and building societies. But I do think that there's still a tendency to talk about starting a family and that kind of thing, sometimes about whether it's our time of the month, and that's not appropriate. But I would agree with you that I think that we work in a cutthroat, bitchy business, and I think personal attacks coming from both sides are unwelcome. I think we behave in a very ruthless way, and I've known people be hounded out of jobs and businesses just by being really good at what they do, and somebody else doesn't like what they see.
What, women on women?
Sometimes, yes, women on women. And I also think that it should never be a beauty parade. It should be based on ability. But sometimes we're a vain peacock type business, and that applies to both sexes as well.
I think
Chris, final word on this because I want to move on to the next question.
I think the statistics are the statistics, but I think there are a lot of positive things in this industry that are pressing forward to try and make significant change. So you have women in estate agency, you've got women in residential property, you've got agents together, you've got agents giving, you've got all these sort of more, I guess, softer areas of this space that are looking to try and forge more positive relationship throughout the industry. And I think I'm not, as you can tell, a lady, but I do have 2 teenage daughters. And so it's very important for me that in our support of female-led organisations and female-led charities, particularly women in the estate agency, that that for me that my girls have an equal opportunity, that they have a voice and what have you. And I think that it's very easy to be negative. It's very easy, and that's not diminishing anyone's personal experience at all. But what we also need to do is recognise that people are actively trying to make change and actively trying to make positive impact as well.
I agree.
I know, obviously that was supposed to be the last word, but
No.
I am a woman, so here we go. I think mean people are mean people. I'm 45 years old. I know. It's all the Botox beauty parade. No, but I think mean people are mean people, and I think you were saying you've got 2 daughters. As a father, I have 2 sons. As a mother, Claire's got 3 sons, and I think to vilify either gender in any debate is just not helpful. I'm sure we've all got experiences of people being horrible to us, whether they're men or women. But I think that whole, going back to the question you asked at the beginning about the discrimination piece, I think the point that Claire and I are trying to make, and I'm sorry to speak for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you defaulted to, that discrimination must be men, and that's just not true. But the key to it is what Chris said, it is a very, very small minority, and luckily they are getting drowned out by the positive change and the positive people that we surround ourselves with.
The best line I heard was a lady called Aviva Wittenberg-Cox, who's a gender balance specialist. And I think the great line is, women aren't the problem, men aren't the enemy.
Exactly that.
And that's the way we should approach it. So changing the gear slightly, because so what we're going to do with that section is a estate agency now competes with technology, finance, healthcare, skilled trades, all of which pays more money for talent. Is a estate agency still selling a career that people want?
No.
Claire?
So I had the privilege of spending a day yesterday with average age was between 21 and 25. And their look on life is very different. What they want from a career is very different. They're all living at home. None of them could actually buy a house or even rent a flat on the money that they're earning right now. And the commission is tight for the lower levels of staff as well. And the targets are really high. I think in reality, if you look at retention now of the under 25s, it's a rotating door. And I am worried. I came into this job having failed as a Marks and Spencer's retail manager, and I instantly loved the job. But it paid well. It paid better than being in Tesco's.
That was the game. If you roll the clock back 20 years, 30 years ago, it was a low basic, but you earned lots of commission. You got a company car, and you could earn more than your mates, and you could go out with your fancy clothes and have an XR3. Okay, the basic salary has not changed in 10 years. The commission is 5%. We don't get company cars, and you have to work 6 days a week. You have to go in at 8. You have to finish at 6 or 7 o'clock. You're being shouted at all the time. Everything is your fault. Hey, that don't sound sexy to me. I'll go and flip burgers. And I did actually used to flip burgers at McDonald's.
The thing is, though, it's the communication piece. I think, a lot of the stuff we've talked about can come back to communication. And I talked earlier about the Deloitte study. And what that showed is 89% of Gen Zs want a job with purpose. And what nicer job than this industry. So if it's not seen as sexy because all those things have been taken away, we need to be talking about other things. And it is that, you know, positive and negative is sitting across the table from someone who is selling their childhood home as a probate sale and saying to them, it's fine, we've got this, we can help you through this, it's a tricky process. Or handing someone the keys to their dream home. What better purpose than this?
Chris?
I think that it's very, very difficult for business owners. And look, I operate an SME business, okay? And we've been running, as we previously said, for nearly 10 years. And in that time, minimum wage has risen from £7.20 an hour to close to £12.40 something. It's around there from memory, okay? Coupled with that, you've had cost of living for everybody across the board. You've got rising costs. In the last 12, 18 months, you've had, for businesses, they've had an increase in national insurance contributions, which has obviously had a knock-on effect. And again, minimum wage, which isn't just minimum wage, it's a cost for everyone that we have to, everyone needs an increase. Couple that with the additional pension contributions as a result. Corporation tax has been increased, tax on dividend has been increased. So business owners are fighting a losing battle. Most property businesses are SME businesses. And so it's very, very difficult to compete just on a financial level. But what we can do, if we can't offer, or your businesses can't offer the cash bit, you know, and you go back to some, you know, age-old principles, you know, Maslow hierarchy of need, marketing, you know, in real terms. If you can't do the cash bit, what can you do? And Chris is right. If you're going to be barracked every day, work long hours, this, that, and the other, you know, there has to be a payoff. And the question is, how do we make it pay off? If it can't be financial, can it be time? Can it be reward? Can it be a better working environment? Can it be a better quality of life? The reason why I think the estate self-employed model has grown is because they've been able to have that balance. And it goes back to the equality piece again, which is why there's a lot of self-employed female agents.
The thing though is because our fees have been degraded so much, we can't pay them. And if we were actually flipping good at the marketing and actually implemented what we did in the first start of the videos, we'd earn more money, which means we could pay more.
Correct.
100%. So just to bring this in, just a final point I'd like to make in this, because we did some research. I think, Danny, you touched on a really important point. I've been in the industry for 10 years, and what I love about this industry more than anything else is we find people homes. There could be not a better, and we do not market that enough, that most house moves go really well, and most people rejoice when they buy their first house or move into the next house or whatever. And as an industry, we help people do that. Also in the data in this part 4 is you are much more likely to love your job in a estate agency and property than in many other industries. So while there are problems, as an industry, we do love this industry. So people who want to get in it and established love the industry. I'm doing a bit of a promo for the industry in a moment. But the other one I think which is also in this report is, as an industry, if we get it all right from a marketing perspective, we use the right technology, this is an industry that needs people. So actually is very insulated against AI relative to other ones that can just be completely replaced. Moving house is complex and you want empathy and negotiation to make it more successful. So genuinely, read this chapter, read this part, but if you run an agency, do listen to the points we're having here and just consider what kind of business you are building and the talent you're bringing into it.